Designed by Klaus-Jürgen Wrede.
Make sure you got that. Leave that in. Give me that and then 5 minutes of silence.
We are recording.
Yeah. I want you to know I got that burp in 4K. High resolution.
Wait until you hear what else I can do.
I'm going to take that sound clip. I'm going to upload it into the Larry chat with a ton of fucking reverb.
Put it toward a soundboard.
Yeah, that's literally what I'm going to do.
I'll clip it for you.
All right. Is that going into the...
I'm going to put it in your Discord.
Yeah.
I'll message Kira. I'll give her the audio of it.
That was a solid burp, dude.
I know,
It was
yeah.
a good one.
Well, I want you to imagine with synthwave behind it and hella bass really blown out. And then I'm gonna set it up so anytime you enter the Bard server, that's gonna be the sound to it.
Good.
Welcome to another episode of Dancing with the Bards, a podcast where we review tabletop games and fight over infrastructure. My name is Ian, and I'm joined by our civil architects, Brooke,
hey,
Will,
Hey.
and Larry.
Yellow.
This month we're breaking ground on the tile placement strategy board game known as Carcassonne, a game where you want to build and claim roads, farms, monasteries, and cities to accumulate the most points before you run out of tiles. Carcassonne was designed by Klaus-Jürgen Wrede in 2000 and is published in the US by Z-Man Games. Technically, we'll be reviewing the big box edition of the game, which is just a copy with all the expansions. With that exposition out of the way, let's start off with number of players. I give this a 3 for number of players. 2 to 5 is usually my sweet spot for a number of players, so we're set on that for me.
I give it a 2. I normally would not say that a game would benefit from having more players, but I feel like a game, especially with all of the expansions, we did the math out. I don't remember the exact number, but we were looking at something like 180 tiles, which
A little more than that,
doubles
yeah.
the pool.
I think it was close to 200.
It was
Yeah.
197 to be exact.
So yeah, a little less than 200. I feel like realistically you could bump this up to a 7 or 8 player game with all of those tiles, and that may reduce the time played. I know you.
Larry's shaking his head.
Well, the only reason why I would be shaking my head is because at 7 or 8 players for a game like this, your turns, the one thing this game benefits from, and we'll touch on that later, is how quick turns go. With 7 or 8 players, you're going to end up creating a lot more downtime. I also only gave this a 2 out of 3 on number of players, though, just because I feel like 6 would have been a sweet spot. And there's nothing stopping you from playing 6 other than meeples, so you can go and, just proxy pieces if you wanted to, though. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I think you said basically exactly what I was getting at as well, which is maybe 7 to 8 is a little bit far because usually when we play games that are designed for 7 or 8 players, it does start to drag. But I'll settle with 6. I think adding an additional person is very realistic for a game like this, and at scale, it may help to speed the game along. Not that this is a slow game by any means. I mean, what did it only take us 4 hours to get last night?
No,
4
actually,
hours.
about 3, I want to say, from start to
Well, that's
finish.
right, because you showed up a little late.
Yeah.
yesterday, so yeah. Well,
Yeah. For almost 200 pieces. That's incredible.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess it could have done. 6 players probably would have been good too with this, if with the expansions.
Yeah.
I'll state, because when you have base game, you have a lot less tiles, and which means a lot less space to expand. And we already got a lot of areas where things got pretty close, like the cities, for example. There was one cluster of cities that everyone had some stake and claim on.
Larry, you can't hurt him.
I
He
would
made
never
Derby.
hurt anybody.
I don't think he was referring to Derby. I think he was referring to the suburb outside of Derby that we were
Yes.
all fighting for.
The one that I ended up taking at the end.
He did end up taking it, yeah. Did you get a double alert for that?
For those not in Connecticut, Derby is a place that has been under construction since its conception in the 1800s.
I'm still convinced it's a place they just store construction equipment and just leave all the cones on the side of the road.
I mean, get this. Ansonia is in the center of Derby, and Derby is like almost a full circle around it. Like, nothing's going to get done because their core is a whole different town.
It's like a ring city, but it doesn't work.
So this was a city that we had going for a solid hour where we were trying to close it off and just never could.
Oh, no, this was Larry's first city.
Yeah, it was the
I never
first
let him close
city
his first
tile
time.
Larry ever did.
Oh, okay. So, but you were on it for a little bit there, right? No, you were. You were playing that the whole 3 hours.
He just wasn't getting tiles
hoping.
for it.
I was hoping.
Any opportunity he got to improve that situation, I actively made worse.
Not to mention all of my serfs taking my land that I had neatly stacked in front of me.
I will also say, if you wanted to, you could probably combine 2 base games. Like, there's nothing, but
There's certain pieces that I feel like shouldn't be duplicated.
like which ones?
For one, the all city center, not the cathedrals. There's 2 of those for a reason, but there's one tile that's like an all city center, and there's one tile that is an all city walls piece. As 2 examples that probably shouldn't be duplicated just because of how powerful they are.
But so there's only one. If you're adding a second one in, you're now at 400 total tiles. So that is
Well, not all of the expansions. You're saying just base.
Yeah,
oh,
so
just
like,
base. So
I'm saying
just
if you
base.
didn't want to play with the expansions, you had 2 people that had this, you could make it easier for those bigger parties.
yeah,
There's a few tiles that I wouldn't want to see, but not
I mean,
many.
you could always take those out
Yeah,
if you
yeah,
didn't want to play with them.
they're out of it. You're looking at 1 to 2% of it.
Yeah.
Not ideal.
And Etsy has the largest amount of meeples for this game.
Yeah.
You can get them in any color you want.
Great to know.
Yeah, that is good to know. I didn't actually look at Etsy.
Oh,
Shut up.
I always do when we do this. So they have a lot of meeples, a lot of customs, which is nice. They don't have a lot of storage. There's some storage, but not as much as other games. I think it's because they have the box.
I was gonna
Oh,
say,
I meant like on Etsy to buy extra.
Yeah, I was gonna say the box control it comes with is pretty tight. if
Which is
you
probably why
pay
they don't
attention.
have. I gave it a 3 for number of players, though. I think the balance was very good.
Mhm.
So inclusivity.
Bill, would you like to start since you had issues?
I didn't have that many issues. I thought this was a nice solid
You brought
thing.
up your color blindness like 3 times.
Which is just hearing you do it is why I gave it a 2.5.
Yeah, I would have given it a 3.
I mean, okay, I did dock it a point because it was one single thing that bothered me. And it is on certain road pieces, you have to differentiate between brown roof houses and red roof inn. And I
Well, that's
have
why
you
the-
3 to tell me that they're red or not.
Well, the inns usually do have a small lake attached to kind of differentiate.
Okay.
Yeah.
But even still, it is one thing, and with so many other icons and so many other things that we had to keep track of, I thought it did a pretty good job at differentiating the different resources, the different cities, all of the different tile types. It really didn't come down to like this is a colored square. This is very obviously a garden, even if like 2/3 of it looks brown. Or like I don't need to know what color the cathedral's tops are. They look like a church.
So I actually gave it a 2.5, and not down to like color differentiation. I gave it a 2.5 just because in the box, the big box, there's so many different types of tiles. While a lot of them work the same way, it does start to get a little muddled here and there. Like roads compared to bridges compared to ferries and all of that. Like they are distinct, and they all function the same way. But it does get a little muddled here and there because a lot of the expansions are pretty much the same mechanic, but
Yeah. A lot of these games that have tons of expansions, they add really drastic rule changes. And all of these are kind of small tweaks and variations on the standardized rules. As I told Larry, like I played this game several times, like on Xbox and on computer, and I've never played the board game version of it. But just taking the base skills that I know from the game and applying them to some of the expansions, it all kind of pretty much does itself with a little bit of clarification.
Mhm. I'd given the 2.5. One for the roof reason. I will say that some of the houses on those roads were inns, but then there were also art on the tiles that had no purpose other than just being nice to look at. Where they had houses with brown roofs, which I think is what really threw you off because sometimes they weren't in, sometimes they were something totally different that made no difference at all. But also, I picked up Larry had this problem a lot when he was counting the cities. It's kind of hard to kind of see which tiles certain things lead onto. Roads is the same thing because a road that leads into a city might only be on like a small fraction of a tile.
I
So
was gonna hit that during comprehension actually. Yeah.
Yeah, so just kind of between the two, I just docked at a half point because I mean, with the inns, that's an expansion thing too. That's not base game, but that was the only reason I docked at a half point.
The only thing that I always say is I wish we had cheat sheets. I would love this. Again, rolls more into comprehension, but I love a good cheat sheet, especially since you got this in the one big set, the one giant box. They should have cheat sheets for all of the expansions because a lot of people haven't played with that.
I will say there's a cheat sheet on the back of the rule manual, but that's something that you would then have to pass around the table the entire time. And as a game that continues to grow as you play, that's not really feasible.
And you can have little cards.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm saying the passing the rule book around is feasible.
No.
If you have little cards,
especially if you're doing it at max players.
Yeah.
I'm a sucker for cheat sheets, though. Any game that has a cheat sheet instantly usually gets full marks from me.
All the scary games I want to play come with cheat sheets.
So it sounds like we're itching to roll into comprehension at this point.
Yeah, because there wasn't that many issues with inclusivity.
Yeah. I give it a 3 for comprehension. Having played base game along with this, we played with 11 or 10 of the 11 expansions for this. I've played this game with some of the expansions individually. I've played base game. I think it's pretty straightforward. It plays very similar to like Sorrow, kind of, except you have to claim the tiles instead of just making a path. It's pretty intuitive, and even with the expansions, they weren't hard to get what they were doing.
I gave it a 2.5, just because, again, no cheat sheet. But also, when I was explained this, it reminded me of Parks and Rec when they're sitting down and talking about the cones of Dunshire, and it seems overly complicated, except for that one person explaining it to you, like, oh no, this is easy. First you do this, and then you do that, and then this comes out of nowhere. Like it took me a second to kind of digest everything from the expansions. So
I gave it a 3 in comprehension, but that's probably because I was blurring comprehension and inclusivity on that. Realistically, I'd probably rate it a 2.5 on comprehension as well, just because, like I said, there's a lot of small mechanics that kind of muddle themselves throughout. Like something like the cities, and then the coat of arms, because cities are this many points unless you have this, and then it does an extra point there, and then roads with the inns, point there, and so on and so forth. So I probably should have given it a 2.5, but I didn't. But it is a 3.
I gave it a 2.5. It was fairly straightforward. I feel like if you were a new player and you were going to go and play with the full 11, it may be a little overwhelming. But
yeah, the only one of the expansions we play with that didn't feel like it really fit in with the rest of them for me, and we were talking about this off the air, where when Larry was reading the rules to us, we were like halfway through the different expansions list, and he's like, and that's all the complicated stuff. Now let's get on to flying machines. And we're like, oh, yeah, that's not complicated at all in this game about building medieval castles in southern France.
Turns out it wasn't.
It's not, but the fact that they added a dice mechanic to this game just kind of felt out there compared to everything else that we're dealing with, like tiles and stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay, the flying machines, they remind me of a very specific thing. Do you remember RuneScape?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we've all played a little bit of RuneScape.
Oh, I played a lot of RuneScape.
Do you remember the gnome flying machines, the fast travel mechanic?
Yes.
I was unable to unsee that. I was like, oh, that's exactly what that does.
And it pretty much does.
Yeah, it works basically the same way.
For me, it very much felt like their manufacturers suddenly got the ability to make dice. And they were like, oh my gosh, we should add something dicey in it. Like, it was just something that was available to them. And as creators are like, yes, that's a cool thing.
Or they were just like, you know what? Every game needs at least 1 die.
It only goes to 3.
Yep.
1, 2, or 3.
I love goofy dice like that. It has a 6 side, but
Hello?
only 3 numbers.
Wow.
Just
Sounded like something
settled.
fell in the sink.
Hey everyone, so at this point Will thought he heard a mouse in his kitchen, but it was actually probably just his dishes or ice machine settling.
Why would they be in here now? They have plenty of stuff to do outside.
If you want, you can
Food's
grab
better
my cat. Apparently my cat is really good at micing, even without front claws. She bludgeoned a mouse to death for me at 3 a.m. and brought it to me last week.
Oh,
She was so proud.
I mean, I would be too.
Well, yeah, considering it was bludgeoned.
Yeah.
That must have taken a while.
You know how hard it is to bludgeon a mouse with toe beans? Takes skill.
Yeah.
Less skill, more determination, really.
And to get it before it dies of a heart attack, now that is impressive.
No, it was dead when I got it. It could have had a heart attack. Who knows?
She didn't like perform an autopsy.
No, she just came over meowing and was the treat meow. And I'm like, I don't have any food for you. It's 3 a.m.
No, she has food for you.
I know. And then I'm like patting the bed, like, okay, just come on up. I'll give you cuddles or whatever. And then she like got up, meowed once, then got back down to go put it next to her food bowl for me.
Oh,
She's a good cat, but just
she didn't leave it in the bed.
This is true. She knew better than to eat in the bed, I guess.
Yeah.
Small wins.
Cat's got manners.
Okay, back to this.
All right. So availability, I actually gave it a 2.5. That's just because a lot of the expansions aren't readily available, but the base game is. Base game you can find pretty much anywhere. Amazon, Target, Walmart, your local game store.
Hard sale.
Yeah, pretty much anywhere. But
I think I've seen it at Savers a couple times.
Yeah. In order to get everything, you're probably going to struggle a little. Well, I don't even think that's for sale anymore, is it?
Big box is still for sale.
Okay.
Big box is still so 9 of the expansions are currently still for sale. They are also on sale not only on Z-Man Games website, but also on Target. Target also has the expansions available there too.
All right.
Yeah. I don't know if they're in store, but this game probably is, but the expansions may not be. But it's in their inventory.
Okay.
I give it a 3 just because it's also available on as a video game. Like Will had said, he learned about this through playing it online.
Xbox Live Arcade, baby.
Yeah. Kind of like with Wingspan. So that's definitely a plus for me for any type of availability. If you can't get it in store, but you can get it on like Steam.
I gave it a 3 for the same reasons. It's pretty readily available, including in secondhand markets, which is usually what I like to see because you can't always afford to buy new. Yeah. So seeing it available on a secondhand market at a decent price, not gouging it up high like some of the ones we've seen, I'm down for it every time.
Eclipse.
$300 final offer.
Can you do 305? No. I don't think so.
I'm waiting for some takes on materials.
This is your favorite section.
I know. I've been trying really hard not to freak out of the materials sections like I normally do.
Do it.
No, I just mean the drama in my voice because I get so excited. This is some of the best materials I've seen for a game like this. Now, down to box organization, cardboard pieces are very well done. They don't seem like they'll peel from the edges very often. Meeples, I love wooden meeples more so than plastic, so that's a great feature. The colors on the meeples are really great too. So I like the variation in colors. Sometimes colors are too similar to each other, and it makes it hard for like setup and put away. I do think there are a lot of meeples though, but I'm pretty sure those are from the expansion sets, right? Like the sheep and stuff.
Yeah. So the base game, I'm pretty sure, is your standard 8, and that's it.
Yeah. The only thing I have the slightest issue is with the meeples is that the 2 meeple person is so similar to the normal like person. Like the people you have to use to put on tiles, there's one that counts for 2, and it's just slightly larger than the rest, which can lead to some confusion.
It's more of a 1 1/8 of a meeple.
Yeah.
It's 2.
I'd rather it be a 2-headed meeple or something like that.
2-bodied meeple.
2-body, yeah, no. Anything else. Or, maybe just a house shape, like saying that it's a little family that lives there. But I that's the only thing I can find fault in with this game. Because everything is very clean, and the box organization is some of the best that I've seen in a long time for the games we've covered.
That's high praise. I gave it a 3 as well, though. I mean, I have no issues. I've had this game for years, been through hell in my trunk, and it is still in great shape. The bottom of the box has a hole in it, and surprisingly enough, that just doesn't even matter down to the way the box organization is set up.
And it gives you a map to where to put things.
Yes.
It tells you how to use the organization they've given you, which is something that you think that your fan base would know without you telling them, but it's good to tell them anyway. Because remember Tea Society when we did that way back in the beginning?
Oh, Dragon Tea?
Yeah, Dragon Tea Society. They had something that looked like it should be organization in the box with no explanation on how to actually use the organization. And it was separate from how it was packaged to get it. Like you were supposed to lift certain parts up and use those to slot in, but they didn't explain that at all. So
Excellent.
I'm still trying to figure that out. I just want to know why they put it there.
If we're doing throwbacks real quick, I'm still thinking of the slot in the box for Cosmic Encounter that doesn't actually fit the card holders.
Oh, that's a Fantasy Flight trait, man. Every Fantasy Flight game that I own, I just get rid of the box. Because honestly, I'm better off. Love you guys. You make great games, but Jesus Christ, man.
Get your shit together.
You need
literally.
So I wanted to be a packaging designer growing up. And this is like 100% where it pays off to bring in a packaging designer is when you're trying to get these box organizations down, because as a creator, that's not your focus. Your focus is not trying to figure out how it goes away. It's trying to figure out how games play and are made. So you need someone who knows packaging and understands that world to understand the weight of boxes, what you need to do to make cards last a long time. Like you need someone who's that's their thing.
So I do want to say that from what I've noticed from playing all sorts of different games from different publishers, I think it also does come down to the publisher on how quality your box control is going to be.
Yeah.
Because somebody like Z-Man Games, somebody like Stonemaier also usually has excellent box control. The guys who published Eclipse, best box control I've ever seen in my life. And then you get somebody like Fantasy Flight where they're like, there's a divider, but you just tuck all the shit underneath it.
I'd be curious to know if those companies had packaging designers, like a team of packaging designers instead of just one in those cases.
I feel like they have to, because some of the stuff, like you'll see when we do Scythe 2, is wonderful. They have little trays for all the minis. Inside the actual box, there's slots where you put all the cubes. Like, it's phenomenal.
Yeah, Stonemaier is they did Wingspan.
Yeah.
And they had not only did they have the excellent box control, but they also had all the individual pieces available on the website.
Yep, they're big on that too.
But I gave it a 3 for materials. I don't know if I said, but no real notes. You guys covered pretty much all of it. I liked it. The art's also very nice and calming, and
it would have been perfect if it wasn't for the meeple issue of like one big, one small. But that's a nitpicky.
Big meeple.
And
Quotation marks.
It did lead to like issues with play because remember, like towards the end of the game, I put 2 meeple on an area just to prevent Larry from full claim on something.
Yep.
And it was supposed to be the 1 meeple, but I
Never saw him again.
nope, he was gone.
Off to war.
yeah, I accidentally put my 2 on a road one time.
That is your road.
No one else's. To be fair, there were some roads in that were worth fighting over, like the ferries.
Our swamp road.
Swampville.
Yeah. I did really like the ferrying mechanic. That was fun.
One's cool. That one's a really cool expansion. Some of them have a lot of worth. Some of them are kind of just there to be there.
I never used the sheep, but I appreciated it being around.
Pig.
Well,
Pig?
so
It was a pig, I think, right?
Yeah,
Was it a pig or a sheep?
No, it was a pig. The pig actually also comes with the builder
Oh, okay.
because it's supposed to
I
be
didn't use
farmers
that
and
one either.
traders. Builders are very good if you're going for large,
Yeah,
but you really weren't. Yeah.
No, I was just afraid that I would misunderstand how to use it. So I was like, nah, that's for next time we play. That's when we play for fun.
Fun, Will.
That was fun.
Fun.
I don't know what you're talking
People play games to have fun.
about. Well, winning is fun.
Will seemed to have a lot of fun. He was laughing the whole time.
He really was.
Yeah, everyone was having.
You were the only one who didn't seem to be having a great time. You were growling and groaning.
I know, yeah. You're
I can't finish this shitty. Will.
Pete, just for background context, he spent probably 2 weeks at work before this episode, every day talking about how he's so good at this and he's a tiny city guy and how he's going to be my biggest
tried
threat.
to do something different.
Yeah.
I believe there were threats like you'll get yours.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, you're still going to get yours. That is a long-term promise.
I feel like if I placed that last piece last night, I would not be talking today. He would have just got up and snapped me in half like a pencil.
All right. As far as setup goes, incredibly easy. I gave it a 3. The back of the tile that you're supposed to start with is a different color, and that's it. You're set up. You put all of your other tiles into a stack, dump your meeples onto the table, and go. There's really not much difficulty for it.
I'd given it a 2, and the only reason being is the not as much as setup, I guess, as cleanup, especially with the expansions.
Well, yeah, that's the exact opposite of setup.
Yeah,
we really should make this setup /
Setup /
breakdown.
teardown, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I will say that if you don't organize it when you put it away, you're gonna have to, because one of the problems we had when we were starting this was you open the box and it had been in your trunk for a while, so it had been all moved around and stuff, and we're like, fuck it, I'm not organizing this by expansion, we're doing all of it but messenger. And
Because that one I can tell the difference.
Yeah, and initially we had planned on doing this as like an hour to 2 hour thing tops, and we were like, okay, we'll be out of here by like 8:30, and because we did all the expansions and each one added individual tiles, and the game doesn't end until you're out of tiles, it ended up going until 10.
About 9:45.
No, it ended at 10.
It was like 10.
Trust me, I know.
I'll say 9:45. It makes me feel better.
So I think that if you don't do it during teardown, you're gonna do it again during setup if you want to have the ability to pick and choose what you play with. And once again, that's really a criticism more of the big box edition than the individual game. For Carcassonne, like vanilla, totally fine, like easy setup and clean up, because like you said, all the tiles that are starter tiles are different colors. You don't have to worry about getting them mixed in. So I mean, that might even be like a 2.5 for me, honestly.
Yeah, I did 2.5 because I did have on the bottom right of each tile shows like a small shadow of what the expansion is it came from. So you can figure out which piece goes where.
More
But
patient people than me can.
Yeah, because it's very faint. I almost wish they had like maybe taken a corner and just made it a different color or something on the front face.
Yeah. I was going to say do something different on the back, but that's not
No.
gonna be all that
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why if you just took like a corner and like just do a little color swatch on a corner,
Yeah.
like yellow is this one. How is rate of play for you guys?
Well, how was Will's opinions on setup?
Oh, 2. Solid 2 for the reasons stated earlier. Not so much the setup itself, but having to organize the tiles back by their... honestly, in all fairness, this should be a 2.5 because there is the little display on the back of the box that tells you where things are. It's mostly just kind of a tedious thing, but you guys said it.
I will also say I liked in setup how you built the river together.
Yeah.
That's just a fun little starting piece to get you used to the turn order, figure out how things go, and it gives you just a second to work together on something before you try and make each other's lives absolute hell.
Well, that's also an expansion, though.
The river?
Yeah.
Oh.
The
Those
river's
are
a whole
start-
separate expansion.
I could
Start
not
with
imagine the river
road tiles,
without
though?
it.
No, normally it's just one road, one city.
I can't imagine that if and when I buy this game. Like I'm gonna have to get that set because I just thought it was such a cool feature. I
Yeah.
thought that was base game.
No, normally
That makes me kind of sad it's not.
It's a city wall with a road. Is
Mhm.
the starting tile, which is far more violent.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, everyone's fighting over the same tile at that point.
Yep. 5 players, somebody's not going there.
Rate of play though, I give this a 3. Pace moved pretty quickly, even with all the expansions in play. It didn't bog anything down. We went turn order went pretty quick, especially towards the end as we were trying to leave.
Yeah.
But you can play this and take your time on each turn and have fun and chat and play it very casually, or you can push through it. It's really up to you how you want to do it. So 3.
I gave it a 1.5. because I had nothing to do in between my turns. Like usually the game gives me a tile that I can look at and plan and try and think about. But as someone with unmedicated ADHD, not being able to figure out what I'm doing next left me just staring at people as they were like mulling it over in their head where to put things, and me just going like, put it there, you can move, that's totally a valid spot, you can put it, no, put it over there. Like I was it didn't allow me to be my best self.
So I actually gave it a 3 for rate of play until I took what you said into account, but I'm used to playing very large games where I can kind of just like go off and do whatever when it's someone else's turn, so that didn't bother me, and I thought the downtime was very quick. But you're right, in between turns, you're not doing anything. Most games you can at least like analyze the board and be like, all right, so on my next turn, I'm going to do this thing over there and that thing over there to get me this. This is, oh man, I hope I get a road, and if not, I sat here for 2 minutes and now I'm screwed. So if I could adjust, I'd probably adjust it down to a 2 because it is quick downtime, but it's also 100% downtime. You're not planning anything. You're just looking.
I would argue that there is a social element to the in-between turns, because just watching everyone play, there was a decent amount of bartering, begging, and then sometimes outright pleading of trying to either trick players into putting something somewhere that might benefit you in the long term, genuinely helping other players occasionally, as you're just kind of looking at the board, and making deals even, which I know is not in the spirit of the game necessarily, but with something like this, it's always bound to happen.
I completely disagree. This is the warring factions of France. Bartering is 100% on the table.
So the only reason why I would disagree with that is because that also comes down to the group you're playing with.
That's fair. That's very fair.
Yeah, next time, even though I will be bartering and begging from all of you, I will have my sketchbook with me so that I'm not like clawing through my own skin to get to someone's turn. Like, because there's not enough time where, like you said, you can go walk around, get a snack or something. There was no time to run over to the garlic knots. Like, you had to be there to get your next turn and just hope for the best. So it was a little, not my favorite on that part. I love this game. I'm getting this game, but I will be bringing my sketchbook next.
How much are you willing to pay for this game?
So I'll go over this really quick. The base game from Z-Man Gan's website is $40. There are 9 available expansions that are $18 each. And the big box edition, which has 11 total expansions, one is unique to the big box edition, I think it's the Big Meeple, is $90. So it is definitely a bargain to get the big box edition if you want everything. If you're going to play with expansions, I mean that, and you want to get a lot of the expansions, the big box edition is the way to go, because that saves you a lot of money overall, as opposed to 9 times 18 plus 40, whatever that is. Someone who's smarter than me can do the math. But I gave this a 3 for price. I feel like $40 is more than fair for a board game like this.
240.
Yeah, so
I actually never realized the drastic increase compared to what you get with getting the big box compared to the base game and getting the expansions piecemeal. It almost seems silly to buy the expansion separately.
Mm-hmm.
That's for people who truly thought they would get away with just the base game and over time have decided to add on elements. But if you've played it and you want it, might as well.
I mean, at that point, even if you bought the base game, it's still going to be cheaper for you to just go out and buy the big box.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of a weird pricing structure. I mean, I gave it a 3 on price just because it feels fair, the 50 and 90. But when I actually stop and think about it, it's a very strange pricing model.
I mean, it makes sense. There would have been a period of time before the big box had come out where people were buying this piecemeal.
Well, it's like Game of the Year editions of video games where you get all of the DLC and the game for $60, or you can buy the game for $50 and pay $20 per expansion. It's a lot like that. You see these kinds of things in video games, but you don't really see it in board games too often.
Well, also, to be fair, you don't usually see board games with, 11 expansions? You
This company, Z-Man Games, I actually see it quite often, though. They're big on that because they're the ones who did Dominion, too. Dominion has, what, like 40 expansions at this point?
Something like that.
Well, aren't those
Jesus.
all just like
It's still an expansion.
Yeah. So this company in specific, Z-Man, they do that quite. Same thing with Pandemic, too. Pandemic has like 30 or 40 different like variations and expansions.
Oh, did it in Pandemic?
Yeah.
Okay. I will say Z-Man Games is not the first U.S. publisher for this, too. I don't remember what the first one was. They picked it up around 2014, 2015.
Okay.
But there was another one before that. And then the original publisher is like Imhurst Games. It's a German company because it's initially a German board game.
I think Dominion was, too.
Probably.
Yeah.
Z-Man might be just their U.S. distributor at that point.
Are we three all around?
Yeah, the only thing I will
Mhm.
say, I don't think so. Like, there's a 20th anniversary edition that's still available. I don't think for $10 more, it's worth the painted meeples. I find them a little off-putting. It would fix my issue with the big and small men, but at the same time, just the tiny artwork on them bother me to my core for some reason.
Extras, 3 for me.
Me too.
So many.
Tons of expansions, all great. They all add a little twist to the typical gameplay.
But not so much that it's overbearing.
Yeah.
Like every mechanic's a slight tweak.
Some of them kind of just feel like expansions to have expansions, but that's not necessarily a bad thing either, because you're getting more game.
And
So,
a dice.
Yeah, and a die.
aside from the flying machines, which I will say is an expansion, I feel like everything does a pretty good job at kind of sticking with the theme as well. Yeah, I do notice that with a lot of games that do expansions, where you'll have something that doesn't necessarily fit the theme anymore, or it'll start to kind of diverge from the original concept of it.
Why are you hating on flying machines so much?
Because
It's a good example of something that seems a little silly.
it's
What?
a little out of place.
I think it's the name Flying Machine that's
What inventor tried to make one and failed miserably?
Da Vinci.
Da Vinci.
Was it Da Vinci?
Yeah.
He had
wasn't
like
French.
5.
Well, he didn't
He
fail
wasn't
miserably.
French.
But there is an Italian. The inventor of the parachute died trying to test the parachute. He's French.
To be fair,
Okay.
a lot of people tried to make a flying machine for a long time. That was like like humanity's big goal for like 100 to 200 years was to be like the first person to build a flying machine. And then some guys out in the middle of nowhere did it with like bike parts.
Well, okay, that was the heavier than air flying machine.
Sorry, you're
the
right.
Dirigibles were around, and I believe their inventor was French and also killed by it.
I give this a 2 for extras. They were for the most part good, but like for the reasons you said, some of them were expansions just to be expansions.
The fairies stick out to me in that aspect, and so does the abbot.
What are you talking about? That actually adds a good mechanic to the game, though.
But it's so minute.
But that's what I mean is a good expansion should not radically change the game. It should add something to the game without changing its overall feel. And I think that's a great example. With roads, base game, you can only place roads. Now you can change the directions of roads long term. You can completely screw over somebody, or you can both score on a road. It opens up the game dramatically. If you can't tell, this is a mechanic that was added to the board game that I have not played with before, and it's changed my life.
Yes, Brooke.
So, fun fact, I did double check before I said this. The reason they added in the flying machines was Da Vinci actually settled in France. So he left Italy and went to France. So he was tied to the whole French concept. I wanted to fact check myself first because it's been a while since Art History 1.
And the flying machine on the tiles does look very Da Vinci-esque.
Yeah,
Was
so
he-
it would make sense.
Flemish, wasn't
No, he's Italian.
it?
Yeah.
His last name
Da
is
Vinci.
Da
I
Vinci.
well, no, but I didn't he?
No, you're thinking. So I think you're thinking of Durr. Durr was a Germanic
Leonardo.
contemporary at the
very
time. Well, he's actually
Flemish name.
unpopular opinion that no one really cares about on this podcast. But Durr was a better artist than Da Vinci and a better like man of the world than Da Vinci. But because he was from the barbaric Germanic area, which was what they were considered at the time, he was not taken seriously. So you're probably thinking of Dur.
I'm probably.
There is
right.
one art major who listens to this who is now completely just blacklisted this podcast.
Honestly, it's a hot take.
There's a single art major out there, and for
Cursing
that, we're
me out
sorry.
right now.
For that, we're sorry.
I'm not.
Live unapologetically.
The other thing I will say, one of the reasons I did dock the plan for the expansions is the ridiculous amount of re-adaptations of this game that exist. I think I've mentioned them a few times that they've milked this for everything they're worth, from Amazonian Carcassonne to Pleistocene era Carcassonne to Gold Rush era Carcassonne. There's like 10 of these things. Their base game, they don't work with any of the, they don't have expansions or anything like that. They're just there to be there.
So, more board game nerdery. That is a Z-Man thing, though. Like, have you ever looked at Pandemic? Go ahead and type in Pandemic the board game into Google for me and tell me if you can't find at least 17 different versions of licenses that they had for a weekend.
Which is fair.
They just came out with a World of Warcraft one.
There's a War for the Planet of the Apes one.
There's already a Warcraft Pandemic, and now there's a World of Warcraft Pandemic.
Which, to be fair, are two completely different games.
And there's also speaking of tie-ins, a Star Wars Carcassonne.
And a Star Wars Pandemic.
Yeah.
This is kind of just their thing.
Back when that license was up in the air for anyone.
Yeah, this is just kind of the publisher's thing. They do this a lot. It's kind of fun, though, because, it might be like, oh, I like this game, but I kind of wish it appealed to me more. How about Lord of the Rings or Cthulhu or My Little Pony? Like, they'll do whatever the hell, and I don't mean that in a negative way.
And
if they can get the license, they'll take one of their big hits and they'll make a game out of it.
Some people aren't nerdy like us and go out on their weekends and say, hey, let's go try a new board game. Some people are going to be more drawn to, this is an IP I'm already familiar with. Let's try something different. This is Star Wars flavor, so it's less scary to me.
But most of them aren't IPs. That's the thing.
Now, why are you so...
I don't know.
No. I'm agreeing with you, but I'm wondering why the expansions won't work for it. Is it just the art style's not meshing, or are there completely different mechanic changes?
There's minor differences. They're not glaring differences, but they are minor differences.
Like the art, for starters, it's like the tiles aren't going to match up.
Yeah,
that doesn't matter.
If they just, I don't mind this concept, but if they fleshed out and just redid the artwork to theme into this, I could be more behind it. I didn't realize that you couldn't bring the expansions on and have a very ugly board, but a board.
Yeah, you can't, unfortunately, because there's so many little changes. Like, I think, for example,
then I totally agree with you.
I think, for example, like the Amazonian ones, you don't have cities anymore. You have jungle patches instead, and they function. Yeah, they function differently. And,
I know,
not majorly differently, but enough that you couldn't then link it with a city style.
Just it just rubs me the wrong way a little bit.
Yeah, I agree with you. That I didn't realize that they weren't compatible.
See, to me though, I kind of like it just as somebody who wants to always try and get more people into the hobby. Because if I can be like, hey man, this one's Star Wars though. Do you want to try this? And then we'll play that, and then I'll be like, all right, well, I have this other version that's the original that has a little bit more stuff. So I look at it more of a way as of an entry point than a negative.
I suppose I already consider Carcassonne kind of an entry point to board games, but that's just me too, because it's
I'm saying people who have zero interest in board games, not someone who's I want to try a board game, but someone who's I like Star Wars. I'd be well, I have this.
Because Carcassonne's better than Catan.
Hey, no. Disagree.
Do not mention Catan around me. It's the Rick and Morty of board games. Anyways, moving on.
I don't think you can now.
I hate Catan with a passion.
Catan was the thing that got me to start playing board games because I wasn't hurting anyone.
And everyone's like, well, Catan is the entry point to board games, but it's also a very smart and intelligent game.
Oh, I wouldn't.
And if you don't like it, you just don't understand Catan. I hate Catan.
I wouldn't go that far.
You hate Catan players.
Yeah.
I don't hate Rick and Morty. I hate people who watch it.
That's fair.
the Rick and Morty of board games.
Yeah, because as someone who's nonviolent and has a hard time fucking people over in board game situations, And in TTRPGs too. I'm not good at that. I'm not good at fighting because it makes me uncomfortable. Catan was like the first game where I could go play where I could just put the stupid little thief on a totally different tile and not mess with anybody.
Okay, fair enough.
So
Still
like,
hate it.
oh, I can, you can hate the people, but
There's so
God.
many things that I just.
we'll just have to play this with you so you can really just rip off on it.
I know.
Yeah.
I was going to say I know what Larry skip was, but now I don't think it's going to happen.
No, I will do it just to review bomb it. I hate that game.
You gotta have your integrity. You gotta do an honest review. You can't just review bomb it.
No, it's an honest review bomb. There are so many things I hate about it.
Speaking of personal feelings,
Ah,
Larry, how'd you enjoy Carcassonne?
as much as Will tried to ruin my night, I'm always a positive person who doesn't suffer from anger issues ever. So I loved it. 3 for me.
The hole in my wall would disagree.
I gave it a 3. But I'd like to just read my little note on the side, which you're going to hate. This very much reminded me of like if Ticket to Ride and Catan had a baby. In the best way possible, because those are 2 games that I really enjoy, and it expanded that into a whole new.
So the one expansion we didn't play with, Larry and I were talking about this in the car ride back. It actually has some very Ticket to Ride vibes to it.
Yep.
It's the messenger. You were saying is objectives pretty much. So you do this certain thing and you get extra victory points, which is kind of like how Ticket to Ride works, where you bet your quest card to.
Yeah.
We should cover Ticket to Ride at some point.
Yeah.
We haven't?
No, we haven't.
Oh. we
Ticket to
should.
Ride I'll play. Ticket to Ride is a good entry level game.
Maybe that'll be the next Christmas one.
Yeah, I've actually seen like just in pop culture, Ticket to Ride start popping up a lot more lately, like in the Saturday Night Live sketch,
That
for example.
SNL bit was good.
Yeah, where I hope I don't get Jumanji'd.
Jumanji isn't a verb.
You clearly said you didn't want to be Jumanji'd, so you're free to go.
Everyone else is building those rails.
All aboard. Ticket to Ride would be a good one to cover one time.
But that's kind of the vibes I got off of this. It took the best parts of those 2 games and then also made it their own too. But it had mechanics that reminded me of them in a comforting way. How did you enjoy it, Will?
I really enjoyed it. It was a fun game. Expansions added a whole lot. Please. I live in a tinderbox.
Larry just picked up a lighter.
I'm gonna light my house on fire again.
Again? I didn't light it on fire last time.
Sure. The insurance company says otherwise.
Before we have an arson problem, I also gave it a 3 for enjoyment. I always have fun playing this game. Like I've said, I've played it with various expansions. I think the ones I played with before, I played with the Builder and the Pig. I played with the River. I've played with the Inns. Trying to remember what else I've done. I've played with a couple other ones, but I never played them all at once before, so that was interesting. But yeah, I had a lot of fun.
So as far as recommendation goes, I gave it a 2.5. I wouldn't recommend it to literally everybody, just because some people might not get grasped by the mechanics of it. You know, it can be, if you're doing very well or very poorly, it could be a very boring game.
You know anything about that?
No, I had a great time. It was edge of my seat tension the whole time. But no, overall, I'd recommend this to most people. People who can kind of take a step back for a minute and deal with the downtime, and if they're not having a good time, just keep going anyways. But people are going to get super competitive. You may have a really bad time.
Yeah, I could see this if we're a competitive group. It might not be a fun game for everybody.
But good thing we're all on the same page.
Yeah, I'm just glad that we just play for fun.
Yeah.
And nobody harbors any resentment from their jobs or anything.
Hey, Brooke was the one who won. I was like second
I was
to last.
happily vibing in my little corner while you guys fought.
You did what I do in most 4X games, where you say, to hell with me winning, I want to ruin this man.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
He screwed me out of the gate too. I don't know if you noticed.
oh, that's what I do too. I pick a target to bully, and whoever doesn't adapt is my target for the rest of the game, and I will sink my own game.
Yeah, because I took that original city. I'm like, I'll just build out here and claim this while it's going. And then he builds right through it, like just bulldozes all of my attempts to build that city. You kind of like helped at one point. You felt bad for me.
Yeah, and unfortunately, no pity was received back on my end. Except for Brooke.
I helped you once or twice.
Oh,
yeah.
Everybody except for me was helping.
I got you out of that spot you were in with the same thing that he did to you that he did to me.
Yeah.
I closed that city for you too.
You didn't.
Yeah, I did.
You made it worse.
Yeah, you
No, I did
consistently made it worse.
It wasn't you that I closed the city for.
No.
I know
You didn't close any of my cities.
How did I got
You closed one of Brooke's cities.
I know that was where I got the wheat from, but I think I closed one of your cities to get the ale.
No.
To steal the ale from you. Or I mean I stole it from
I
someone.
like how there's an ulterior motive to this too, though. He's like, yeah, I stole all your shit, though.
I helped out solely because my little brain wanted the board to look nice, and I hated the little pieces not connecting properly. So if I had a piece that fit somewhere and someone was not doing it, I would do it.
But I give it a 3 for recommendation. I feel like most people could get something out of this board game, even like younger kids, which could probably have a decent amount of time, decent time with this.
I gave it a 3, but I would say their lower age range is 7. I wouldn't play the expansions with a 7-year-old. Like that would be too much to add on to it without a cheat sheet involved.
Fair.
I don't think you get a 7-year-old to sit still long enough.
It almost feels like just the normal game, yes, because it's like Candyland-esque in that way, where if you're just building to close up a shape or to follow a line, those are easy concepts that kids can get. But once you add in like the flying machine or some of the other expansions like the gold, that might be a little too big of an idea for most 7-year-olds.
You'd also be shocked, though, at how many younger kids will play larger games. Back when I was at Gambit, we did a 12-player version of Twilight Imperium, and one of the kids playing with us was like, he was like 8 years old, and he sat there for all 9 hours of it. I will never play a 12-player game with that again. But
I was
if it piques their interest, I mean, they might.
For sure. I'm just kind of basing it off of the 7-year-old
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
I
Also, you're talking French architecture as opposed to space war.
Yeah.
So theming helps a lot.
Oh, I was more a French architecture person as a child, but like
I'm pretty same.
yeah.
I don't know. You tell me lasers and explosions, I'm there no matter what.
You told me
that.
Renaissance Fair and I could not get there quick enough. So.
yeah. 7 years old, I might be a little low, but like at age 10, I know like I used to go to those summer camps where they would just throw you in the school still, and you just stayed in the cafeteria all day because your parents had a job to do. Yeah, bringing back memories for anyone else.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
Yeah. So we would play like we either did like stuff like this or Guitar Hero is all we did.
Yeah, but like 7 to 10 is a huge cognitive jump.
Well, yeah, but I definitely think like younger kids and 10 definitely counts as a kid would probably have more fun with this still.
Yeah. I would like to move on to replay because I can see this as a never-ending replay for me. Like it has enough to it that you would never get the same game twice. Not only because of the people you play with, but also just about the luck of the tiles.
So the last thing you mentioned there is the only reason why I gave it a 2. Because at a certain point, I like games that are a little more meaty. Like I love this game, but it's only spur of the moment strategy for me. And for me, that's not something I'd always want to pick up and put out onto the table. Sometimes I want something that has a little more meat on the bone. Sometimes I want something that has a little bit less. But it's in that weird middle ground of like in-depth strategy, but it's only flashes of it that kind of does push it a little away from me.
Mm-hmm.
So I gave it a 2 out of 3 for replay value. It's definitely not like a 1. It's something I like bringing to the table, but it's not something I want to bring to the table.
I don't know. I give this a solid 3. This is one of the few board games that I've played a lot of.
And you've done this a lot single player, right?
Yeah, so I mainly played against like bots or like people online. So being able to look at my competitions actually brings a whole new element to it.
See the pain you're causing.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of power you have.
Oh, I on that topic though, I will say I did notice that like normally I would play very aggressively, and I would make sure that like whatever anyone's doing, I would prevent it. Like at a certain point, I was like, okay, well, Ian's my friend, and I want to help Ian in some places, or Brooke's my friend, and I can't do anything to screw Brooke.
But then you also get some of
You
that.
did.
You get some of that help back too occasionally. But I give it a 3 for replay value. It's a game, like you said. There's definitely some times where you want a game with more substance. But this is a game that I can play with just about anyone. Like I can take this to like a family reunion and play it with like people who don't normally play board games all that much. And I feel like they, especially with base game, they would not struggle with that at all.
That's actually what I'm planning on doing for our reunion picnic coming up.
We
Is grabbing
usually
this
hit
out.
a game like right before you got to go on your family reunion. And then
Yeah,
bring
well,
them
it's
there. I forgot what it was.
this
last
one was
year.
usually cruising. So like the last one was because I was like, I'm gonna take this on the cruise. It's way easy to like take with me.
I
This
forgot
is
what
for an
that
actual.
was.
I think Once Upon a Time I took with me. I took Flux. I've taken Pooh, which I hate, but I took it anyway. I've taken a lot with me on cruises that are small. This one would be better for more of a picnic setting where you have more table space and more packing space too.
That is something I forgot to bring up in setup real quick. Table space is a big thing with this. You cannot play this on a small table. Sorry, that's all that about that. Just as a caution for anyone who's thinking about getting this game, make sure you have a large space to play it.
All right. So as far as innovative or classic,
Sliding scales, woo!
My favorite part that will be changing soon. I just need to actually have a break in my work lull. So that
Yeah, we're gonna.
we're looking into a plotting method instead, which sounds scarier than it is.
I want to be able to say I have a -2, or 2-3 or something like that.
It'll be easier than that, but I will. I just need the summer to actually redo the lists.
I gave it a classic 3. I think that this is a classically styled game. Tile placement is like as old as like Mahjong. Like it's not a unique concept. The way they do it is definitely a little different, but other board games either have already done it or followed in their footsteps. And this game in general, I think for at least this era of board gaming, because it came out in 2000, is a good example of a classic board game at this point. 20 years, I think, is long enough to be a classic, right?
20 is vintage.
Yeah, okay.
Classic cars have to be 100 years old. We're twins. I think this is the first time we've ever agreed on something wholeheartedly on the scale that it was 3 classic. I don't know if we've ever lined up on that before.
3 classic.
2 innovative.
Really?
Yeah, just because there's a lot of tile placement games, but there's not a lot of tile placement games that function like this, where you have to be paying attention to all sides at all. So it's a different enough twist that it's not mind-blowing, but it's impressive, especially for when it came out.
I'm gonna justify this. This specifically, this game has become so ingrained into our culture that we are now seeing other games copy its traits. That's why I think it deserves the classic title over innovative.
See, that's why I feel like it deserves innovative, because at this point, everyone else has copied it, and everything else that's doing it is now classic.
It was innovative for its time.
Yeah.
Well, but that's what I'm saying is and now I'm getting into semantics, but like at what point does a game go from being innovative to classic? Because I would say 24 years is pretty good.
The
When I
way I
can
look
find
at
it
it-
at Savers
The way I look at
regularly,
it, though, is
That's
did they
fine.
do it first, or are they taking a trend that's very popular?
Okay.
You know?
That's
So to me, if this was like anything but Carcassonne that functioned exactly like this, it would be the exact opposite direction. But they did it first, and a lot of other games now do it. So to me, I kind of view that more as innovative as opposed to classic.
Okay.
Because it's not a style being adopted, it's a style that has then
Mhm.
since been adopted.
I would argue, especially with the end and other, so with the expansions, that definitely starts to become more evident. Like I said, the individual elements of the game you can break them down as much as you like to anything really, but yeah, you're right. It did put it all together at once. So like, and once again, that's why it's under like personal scores, because it really is a personal feeling on that. Going into the anyone else? Sorry for the classic innovative. I think everyone talked.
Yeah, everyone give their thoughts.
Yeah, going into the simple and complex. So I give this a simple 2, and the only reason for that is just, as I said, the expansions kind of pushed away from that excellent simplicity that comes with the base game, where you can have a game that you can finish in like 30 minutes. And it's for better or worse, right? Because there's a lot of it. It adds a lot of extra character to the game. It in a lot of ways makes it better, but it does kind of take away from the simplicity that comes with the base game too.
I think that's fair. I may have been a little over generous. I gave it a simple 3, with the caveat that the more expansions you add in, less simple it becomes. I still don't think that it deserves a full point docked for the expansions.
I also gave it a simple 2. I'm right there with you. The less extra stuff you play with, the simpler it is. The way we played it with 10 out of 11, it's got a hint of complexity, but it's nothing that's up there for me.
Mine's supposed to be a simple 2, but I put it on the wrong side of our sheet. It was the same point that you made about the number of expansions depends on the complexity of it. But even with the expansions, complexity I feel is like the wrong word, because complexity means you have to actively think about it. This was more like adding an extra rule to a game on the recess field, where it's like, you can't touch the brown tiles on the ground now. Like, it was very easy.
It's still all very fluid. It just, when you have all that out in front of you, it takes away from because when you have base game, I know you haven't actually played base game. Base game is literally just, you have the cities, the roads, and the 8 peoples. And that is very simple.
Yeah. No, I can definitely tell. I was agreeing with you.
I only brought that up because I know we were confused about the river thing before.
Yeah, because I like the river. And
The river is good.
I can't imagine the game without the river. That's my thing, is that the river was such a nice way to set up gameplay where everyone was just helping each other out and it wasn't a fight.
I will say, the river was brand new to me as well. It did dramatically change the way. Usually, one of the things with the fields or the pastures is, as long as they're contiguous, it's hard to break them. Unless you have like multiple cities kind of around a pasture with roads cutting through them to bisect it. Usually by the end of the game, if you have somebody on one of the pastures, they can touch basically every city and they get a crazy boost. The river seems like it was implemented to kind of cut that down, because now you have your starting line, which is already cut in half.
Yeah.
So you're not going to get that giant pasture to start with.
That I can see. I didn't even look at it from a strategic point. I looked at it from a friends at the table point. Like, it set you up to want to work together in some capacity, which a lot of the time, I like community. I don't like fighting people. I liked Wingspan because I got to just look at birds. Like,
I think you're actually really going to like Scythe because it's a game where combat is entirely optional and you're probably better off not doing it.
I like that already. We're hinting at our next thing,
Yes.
by the way.
It will be the first episode I am not on.
It's gonna feel really weird.
I know.
Wait, were you? Yeah, because were you on the football one?
I was technically I was not I did not score Blood Bowl, but I was there. I was still there,
Painfully
and I was in the audio and everything. I did the
Had a
intro.
Horrible time.
Yeah.
Not as bad as me and Tristan did, but a horrible time.
It was a lot of fun. We should
Yeah,
do
I
it
was
again.
there for the last game. I was there to do the intro and outro. I was there for that episode. So this will be the first episode I'm not on.
Happy you get a break.
I know. 2+ years.
I know. Yeah.
What are you gonna do with yourself?
I don't know, I might go
It's
to
gonna
a
be-
park. Probably
Stare-
not. I'm probably gonna
no.
watch videos in my room.
No, we're gonna
He's
see
gonna
him
play-
out the window.
He's
He's
gonna
gonna
play
be
Carcassonne
hanging
on his phone.
outside.
He's going to be outside playing Carcassonne
He's
on
gonna be
his
knocking
phone.
on the window. Audio's off. Audio's off. Skip it.
All right. So final scores. I give this a 40 total.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Whoa.
I gave it a 38.
Same.
Nice. Twinsies.
Woo.
36 and a half.
Boo.
That's
Loser.
good for me.
which brings us to 38 as our average score.
See, you guys still held it up. It's all good.
Yeah. So that is really high. So I think I can't stress enough. I feel like we all recommend this game pretty much.
Yeah, and
Hardcore.
for
Yeah.
once, I don't have somewhere I'm like, maybe don't give this game to this specific person. This is a game where I think just about anyone can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What a difference between this and Stardew for score, huh?
Oh yeah, and I love Stardew. That's the problem. That's still one of my.
Opposite ends the spectrum.
That's still one of my favorite board games.
I would have loved to be here for that because I feel like I probably would have either absolutely destroyed it or loved it. Just from what I've heard.
It was very much Beautiful Mind style, where it was us around the table, like talking to each other, trying to figure out how to make things work while there was a fire in the fireplace, and I had Stardew Valley music playing.
So from what I've gathered, it's just what not to do with a worker placement game.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And honestly, if you read other reviews on the game, other than just the review bomb that it gets on, the positive review bomb it gets on Board Game Geek, because people love Stardew Valley.
Yeah.
Our review isn't really as far out there as it seemed.
Yeah, as someone who worker placement games are probably my favorite genre of game, I would have loved to see one that's done so poorly.
I can give you the box. Promise to give it back.
I will.
Okay. You can play it one player.
I would never do that to myself. If I'm going to suffer, then everyone's going to suffer. Or at least 3 other people are going to suffer. I have my usual Saturday night group that I can drag that out for.
Yeah.
We finally got to play King Domino, which is another thing I'd like to do on this at one point. Squares.
I can make square.
Can you show me a square right now? Those lines weren't even, pal.
Yeah, that was more of a rhombus.
It's rectangular.
Look at that. Look
It's
at
like a parallelogram.
There on each. There we go. That's
Look at
more
that. Look at
squarish.
that. That's square.
I don't know. That's more of a pentagon.
Or a rhombus.
My
The
thumbs
circle goes in the rhombus hole.
The trapezoid.
I'm sorry, my thumbs are bent in weird ways.
That whole game.
Not everything with
that
4
joke
sides is a
was,
square. Well,
Square?
The triangle goes
No.
in the pentagon hole.
all right.
Neither of those were squares, Chief.
Well,
That's just a drunk square, so that's close enough.
What about that? Is that
Well-
a square?
while Will works on squares,
I know my shapes.
it's time for us to hit the road. If you like the episode and you want to see what we're up to next, you can follow us on our socials. We're on Facebook, Mastodon, Twitter, and Blue Sky. Most of those have links to our Discord page as well, where you can talk to us directly. Discord is definitely the best way to reach out to us. I usually go over our socials, but I don't really check X as much because, and Blue Sky is probably the other one I check the most of because I get more outreach tools on that one. But Discord is definitely the best way to reach out. So until next time, au revoir.
Oh, it's French.
Yeah.
Avida Zane.